Happy to welcome everybody here. Thank you for coming to take part in our briefing. I would like to welcome mass media, the authority representatives, journalists. Thank you again for coming for this event today, which is very important. My name is Marian Prisezhnuk. I present here the Polish Foundation Open Dialogue, a bit of our roundtable, which is called "The State and the ATO Fighters, Fighting Corruption and Ensuring Social Security." Why we decided to provide this roundtable, or hold this roundtable. The matter is that the fighters who come back from the front line, they encounter bureaucratic problems here in the rear zone, and they cannot get the status of the participant of the ATO, and those families who lost their breadwinner cannot get those benefits, and the corruption is continuous, and the abuse of the rights on the part of the authorities continue. So we decided to invite here reps of the public organizations, which are going to talk about the most conspicuous, or let's say most burning problems, I would say. A few words about our foundation. The Open Dialogue Foundation is the representative office of the Polish Foundation with the same name, which deals with monitoring the legal protection and monitoring of the situation in the post-Soviet space, in particular in Ukraine. Thank you very much, and you're most kindly invited to participate in this discussion. Once again, good afternoon, esteemed colleagues. We are going to start our first block, the state and ATO fighters fighting corruption and what the problems they encounter to get the status of the fighter of ATO. Also, we're going to talk about the possible ways to resolve those problems. First of all, I would like to thank everybody who joined us here, especially those who registered beforehand. We actually met some of you. We visited us. A few words about our time limitations or our schedule. We are going to give the floor and say how much time you have. We planned 5 minutes for the speech or presentations, 3 minutes for the question and answers, and we reserve the right as the moderators to give the floor to this or another participant. Also, we invited to participate in our roundtable a number of the People's Deputies of Ukraine, our Verkhovna Rada MPs, and some of them sent in their. Again, they can participate in our discussion. Just raise your hands. Mikhail Dmytro, Victoria Zhuga, our colleagues will be present here to name a few. You can ask your questions, put their questions to them. They'll be here in the audience. We planned our program and our roundtable program to give the floor to different sides, different opinions. So let's start. First to speak is here Maxim Sysoienko, lawyer and ATO fighter. I understand you planned some presentation to use. Please screen. The following fact, I'm going to talk about the status of the fighter of ATO and who is eligible to that. So again, what we're speaking about the status is given to those who defended the territorial integrity and the sovereignty of Ukraine, participated in fight, in combat actions, etc. Those provisions have been determined by the cabinet ministers of Ukraine. This resolution is subject to modification and complementation, I would say. And me as a lawyer, this is just a working document, but doesn't work to full measure. Why? Because this order, this procedure regulates the whole procedure of providing or granting the status of the ATO fighter or participant. It makes provision. When you come back from the combat task, the commander has to form a set of documents, a package of documents, prepare the piece of information provided by this document and send to the special commission. By the way, this issue was taken care of offered by the Specialized Commission, it's interdepartmental. Then they have passed a decision on granting the status of ATO fighter, and then they have to inform this person about granting him or her this status with a special and bestow special sign, or let's say symbol. This is not just a dry theory. I am a practicing lawyer, and they have the people in the specific issue. I myself has been the fighter, ATO fighter, and I have the right to become to have this status. I have not been given this status for several months now. And this is not because I'm a bad lawyer, because I just did not deal with that issue before. I was going to actually join the fighters because my heart told me that, and I didn't plan to get this status. But later I came across this problem. Now I'm going to talk about those problems which I myself faced, and those people who address me. Let's say the special information which are provided for by the procedure and the order, and they can be issued only to soldiers and the military servicemen, and they do not meet this let's say the model form. This is a form of the paper which is provided for by the procedure. Second slide. This is specific paper which was issued for former soldier or serviceman, participant in the ATO, which is drastically different from the one which I showed before. This is my personal paper which I received in 2015, which also doesn't meet the requirements of the procedure. I would like to draw attention to the top right corner of the certificate. When I addressed the specific authorities, just asked me to do that myself in order to get this status. But they said, yeah, but these documents must be an original copy, but not the second copy. So they actually issued me the second copy. This is what regards to the specific information paper. Why is so important those documents be properly drawn up? Okay, the village of Blavacha in Kyiv region, they actually applied to get the plot of land. The lawyers say we have about 15 people, applicants, and have absolutely different documents. We don't know which we should take into consideration to answer and which not. So please bring us the documents that you are participants, ATO participant, and we can consider your application. As you know before, my documents still are not submitted to the Interdepartmental Commission. Half a year later, still no papers are not available. This is a widely spread situation. Many people face this. You can only personally resolve that, facing the lawyers. Without the lawyers actually help, you cannot resolve this problem. There's a big list of mandatory documents, excerpts from some other document or registers which the fighter himself or herself cannot obtain.
For example, the commander of the unit submitted documents and the commission takes a decision. Then you have 1 minute left. Then new adventures start. They have no paper, or they lost something. I can give you the number of the military unit, I can give you the names, we have all this information. If someone's interested, I will give all this information to you later. The person received the certificate of participants of warfare, and they find the register, the person signs, where's the insignia, doesn't have, for example, the military unit 2037, which is near Kiev, they received the 70 signs.
Бачимо, це сайт
70 badges only, and here we can buy the medal of the participant of warfare for 100 hryvnias, and that is the auction na Ukra. We can also buy this medal And that is what they suggest to do in the unit, to buy these things independently. I believe that is these are violations and the public has to react to that. I believe that's humiliation. Thank you. Please finish and you will have another opportunity to say a few words. I need 10 seconds more. I would like to say, as myself as a lawyer, how myself as a lawyer see what steps are to be made to address this problem. First, we need to put the information, some pieces of information where the rights of the military will be mentioned and the hotline phone numbers are to be given. This information should be in the personnel departments of military units. Also, this issue of the giving the status of participant of warfare should be controlled. There should be disciplinary responsibility for people who are responsible for preparing documents to the Commission. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. The next one is Natalia Veselova, the founder of the organization Legal 100.
Можете поставити питання як людям, що виступили, так і сказати щось від себе. Пані Леся.
Доброго дня. Власне кажучи, да, проблема на
The problem of providing the status of participant of warfare is very important today. Also, the problems which were enumerated, to these problems I can add something else. These problems are not the problems of theory or the problems which lawyers invented themselves, reading the technical norms of the legislation. These are the problems of real people who call hotlines of Legal 100, of Coordination Center of Help to ATO participants and other organizations. We start from the beginning. 414, Resolution 414 regulates the procedure of providing the status of participant of warfare, but on the 4th of February 2015 it was supplemented, it was changed, amended, so that the procedure of providing the status is faster, but this did not happen. This procedure has become longer. The Inter-Ministerial Commission is now working very efficiently. They pass decisions very quickly. But the sectoral commissions get a lot of burden. They have to consider all the documents, and the provisions on these commissions were not submitted for registration to the Ministry of Justice. And the situation was when in these commissions didn't have powers to provide the status of participant of warfare, and the number of documents was accumulating, and they were not issuing the documents to servicemen. The next problem is that today the decision on providing the status of participant of warfare could be passed only by sectoral committee or commission. That is not a problem for example, the State Border Service of Ukraine or the Service of State Special Communication, but such entities as Ministry of Interior, National Guard, the Ministry of Defense, where most of the participants are related to. That is a big problem, because that is one commission for many thousands of people, and everyone, and they have to prepare the package of documents for everyone. There should be 3 documents per person. All of them are to be processed, and the decision is to be passed on every person. That is the problem. And we believe that we need to look for some solutions. Maybe the Ministry of Defense will suggest some procedure. Maybe these decisions could be passed by regional military commissariats. You have 1 minute left. These are two main problems, but the next one is the document which is submitted by military unit. The guys say, my military unit submitted all the documents half a year ago. I do not know where they are. I don't know when I will get them back. The military unit does not give you any information on at what stage of development the package of documents is. There should be the mechanism in place which will allow to follow that the document was reviewed and the Ministry of Defense reviews it. There is no mechanism to find out what the documents are. And when the documents go back to the servicemen, no one knows where the documents are. And people say that some of these certificates are lost. There could be a very simple solution which was suggested by one of the members of Legal 100 to invent some online mechanism to submit the documents and online document to receive the resolution, and so that you can follow where the documents are online. This sounds like utopia, but please finish up. Yes, I will just say one more thing. Basically, this is the idea which is to be developed if we want to have the society which cares about its defenders.
Thank you, Lesya. Next speaker is Oksana Timchuk, lawyer, legal advisor, and defender. He is going to say what corruption schemes exist in the process for granting or obtaining this status, and then we can communicate with those officials who are present here just to discuss how we can combat those schemes, corruptive schemes. Well, thank you very much. From the very beginning, our law, let's say, legal group started to work with those problems which are faced by our fighters. But we actually went in different directions than our colleagues. Interests of the brigade as a whole, for example. If I'm not mistaken, it happened 5 months ago. And now we have processed and submitted to the ministry, and we are waiting for the feedback. For the status of documents for 95% of this brigade. We did that work, not only us, but and there was a public organization which doesn't have such opportunities. We were talking about 6 people who were working on that issue. First of all, what problems we encountered during the beginning of our cooperation. The first problem we faced, the fact that those persons who are responsible in the first part, they do not know how to do that. So we are not talking here about some kind of crazy corruption schemes. We are talking about the human factor per se, and people actually covered in this resolution, which is rather foolish, I would say. It's so that the whole any person can understand what is what there. It's just a way, we cannot even think about that. The major problem is sectoral orders. Those orders from the ATO. 700 the next months, and because we knew already how to do that, and we face no more problems. One of the biggest problems I can mention here, the lack of such a link at the South headquarters. We encountered a lot of problems because those orders which were documents which were adopted in their commandments were not acceptable there because, for example, the copies of the passports, whatever else, we could not work with that. The biggest problem, as I understand it now, is not the impossibility to get the status by the fighting who are still there in the front line, but for the demobilized persons, because you know, this responsibility is taken from the military unit and is delegated to the military commissar office. And here lies the biggest problem, and here we have the most difficulties, majority of difficulties faced by those who would like to get that status. I cannot understand how the military commissar office can get the sectoral order. Even the military unit cannot do that. In different problems, somebody is absent or something is absent. Now we found the problem when they called from the headquarters and to help some of the Lviv residents who are coming back. We do not work with Lviv residents by any way. We had to join and try to resolve this problem. Well, if you're talking about the training of two dozens of persons can actually help us to resolve this problem. We understand the problems exist in the whole country, but this is not the lesson one. We can share our experience to all those who are interested in that, in this issue, and we can provide more details how we did that and how we worked, you know, just to get the results. You know, thank you very much for be within the time limits. Before we give the floor to the officials, I will turn the mic to Anatoly Svirid. It's a legendary person. In due time, he was known as a defender of the Donetsk airport. The mass media carried the information that he was, let's say, taken prisoner, and when her wife went to liberate him from the, let's say, from this situation, she herself was taken prisoner. Yeah, well, actually, when you ask him a question, how his assessment, first, he provided a very interesting answer. Those people who fought in the front line and they have faced the problems with being granted this status. Anatoly, I give you the floor. You have the right to be the first to ask a question or to address your questions to the officials. We have the Minister of Defense rep of the military tribunal, and some of those who work with the. Do we have the Interior Affairs? Because they promised two persons to be joined here. Unfortunately, we do not have any rep from the Ministry of Interior Affairs, nor from the presidential administration. Thank you. I'm a sergeant of 1st Mobile Company of this 1st Battalion. We were actually we had to serve in the paratroopers brigade. First of all, then they decided to set up, perhaps, you know, they created Brigade 81 with location, the permanent location in the ATO zone. So my question to our respected persons, officials and officers, how we should treat this situation. Our company for for a long period of time does not leave the ATO zone from frontline in the airport where we were defending the airport. We do not leave this ATO zone. It still are there. So what would be the mechanism for getting or obtaining this status? Natural, no one yet got this status. Nobody was going to that zone to get some benefits. Maybe it's just small percentages of people who were fighting there, but those who saw the war and the deaths with their own eyes, they are not after the benefits, you know. So my question is, let's forget about those who are still alive, continue fighting. What about those who were killed or have been killed? I have a number of, a list of those people who never got any status, any benefits, any awards, or whatever. Nobody of the officials or Minister of Defense officials attend the funeral ceremonies, and nobody dare to look into the eyes of their parents. They provided some uniform and said, okay, guy, you have to go there and stand up and fight, you know. So it so happened that this society deals with those issues. We are blessed that we have some volunteers at this who visit that zone, and sometimes they are present there when the mines are flying, you know, so to say. They are really lunatics or crazy person, but we are really appreciate the fact that they exist, you know, that they are with us there. I would like to say a lot of things. Emotions overwhelming me, you know. Yeah, actually, those guys who were killed, they were buried. Let's say they provided only this squad of the shooting squad. Yeah. Then they provided some salvo during the burial ceremony, and 1 year later they completely forget about those guys. No benefits, nothing, you know. So I can't find the proper words to express my feelings. Yes, we did face some problems. They forget even they forgot us even when we remained in the let's say the field of battle after they were undermined or something like that. They lost it, whatever. So, but now there is some kind of trick. So what they say, we remain there on our own consent, and we stayed in the report just to defend that. I'm not sure how many people who fought for the report and left it, who obtained the status? Nobody. When there was a kind of show off, let's say ceremony of the exchange of the personnel, that was the only one who got the status. No, when we came to Kharkiv, nobody knew what to do with us. Nobody knows anything. They just checked us, inspected us, verified us, and then said, go home, and forgot about this. What about the rehabilitation where you assisted? I thought, I'm still on a rehabilitation course. I'm still going through that. Then the immediate, very topical, urgent issue, if you're talking about this kind of status, we were not going there to get some, I repeat myself, but those guys who were killed, they were completely forgotten by the state. The state must somehow participate in this thing, you know, to help or to assist the families of those guys. Somebody in Slavutich, somebody in Brovary, somebody else in Cherkasy, you know, in the status in the regions, the status of their son or somebody else, you know, could give them some benefits for paying for the communal services. These were considerable assistance. Okay, let's summon up your speech. Who would like to help? First of all, I would like to help everybody. Or maybe somebody can say a few words about this, you know. It so happens that again, the state, we can actually, we delegate this problem to resolution of this problem to volunteers, and we are going to address volunteers. This is the society in society. Unfortunately, the state authorities don't want to do. They keep away from this problem. Now, I give the floor to Mr. Maltsev, one of the fighters in the ATO. Victoria, please, microphone to this gentleman. Well, and again, having said whatever is said, our unit is still at the front line, and we complete, or let's say, we carry out our combat task.
I would like to say that the main thing that we heard was the word responsibility. I believe that the issue of providing status and all the privileges, another thing is, well, of course, responsibility, and then information awareness campaign. We believe that the problem is locally, in local authorities, different units do not interact. They do not interact with the territorial units of law enforcement departments and with military commissionaries. And that is the issue of preparing documents, submitting documents. One of the ways of resolving this issue with the interaction is creating territorial bodies and attracting volunteers, law enforcers, the veterans of war, not just the participants of military actions in the ATO zone, but that is the issue of coordination of all veteran organizations which are related to war. But again, I would like to tell you one thing. The main thing is responsibility of the military. We have a representative of prosecutor's office, Mr. Golub. How does the military prosecution office register all these issues, and what should be the responsibility of civil servants, so that there are not cases that Anatoly Svirid mentioned. Tell us, please. Thank you for your question. Thank you for this opportunity to meet here. I understand that this is a wound which will not heal very long, because a person who risked his life comes to our peaceful society and does not see understanding from civil servants. I don't think there should be any additional criminal responsibility. On the 14th of October, there were amendments introduced to the law on prosecutor's office, and the prosecutor's office does not conduct any inspections. We saw some difficulties when we were addressing the issue of replying to submissions from citizens. The submission, like I was not given a status, but I was there. We sent it to the State Border Service, to the Ministry of Defense, and the submission which says that the civil servants avoid executing their duties, issuing such certificates, or as the representative of such organization mentioned, if they demand for some compensation in dollars, then we submitted to the prosecutor's office. There were cases when the commander was issuing certificates to his subordinates who, as if were going to ATO zone to examine the military equipment, but they were doing it outside the ATO zone. We had such cases. Today, the prosecution office of Chernihiv garrison says the administrative claim to the court, the person was dismissed because of the wound, but until now, in January, but until now cannot receive any documents to submit them to Sectoral Commission of the Ministry of Defense. I have a question. Someone mentioned that the cost of such certificate is $500. Is that like the average price in the market to get this? That is enough to introduce information to the register, because to the register, well, basically that is enough to start the criminal case. $15, whether that's $15, $100, or $1,000, there's no difference. Such people should be immediately sent to ATO zone. Immediately then, not to ATO zone, because ATO zone starts after Izum, but they are to be sent to the zone where the military actions are going on. So they are to be sent to the military zone. And the answer to Anatoly's question, there is a big problem for members of the family because this is the category of people who are all in sorrow. They don't know where to go. And I believe that the moderators have our contact phone numbers. The issue of providing this, we cannot basically replace the bodies which should be issuing such certificates, but the inactivity of the civil servants is to be also investigated. The Verkhovna Rada delayed till the 15th of July the putting to effect the law on prosecutor's office. But there is the article which says that if a person is unable because of the age or because of disability or limited ability, if the person cannot present the legal interests and requires defense, the courts do not always receive such applications in the interests of the families of those who have the member of the family killed. And so now the military prosecutor's office has announced about 97 of such claims, and I believe that with the help of the military prosecution office, many see unfairness, but they are the live people with the help of volunteers, with the court, the families of those who were killed. That is our primary task. And I have one more question. Are the examples of successful investigation making responsible those who are involved into such corruption schemes? Can you tell us how many? I disagree that there are no. We don't have the. In July and August, 30 criminal cases were filed. These cases were sent to the court, and that was about civil servants from military commissions. If the Ministry of Defense can confirm it. And now our courts are very democratic when it comes to qualifying the actions on Article 238. But people are dismissed from their position. There is a principal position of the Ministry of Defense. The suspicion is announced, but then the sentence is to dismiss from the position. What do you mean by dismissed? It's not like, as Pyotr Alexeyevich said, they are to be sent to ATO zone. Unfortunately, I don't have that information. I cannot inform you about that. Now you will have an opportunity to ask questions. You've heard that the cases which are not addressed, the cases on providing the status of the participant, they are then sent to the Ministry of Defense, and we give the floor to the Ministry of Defense.
Good afternoon, I'm Kenan Galota. I'm head of social work, main director for the work of the personnel of the armed forces of Ukraine. I would like to thank all the organizers of this function, but I also would like to immediately ask them and you. I can feel that as soon as I took the seat, the attention was focused on myself. Maybe I'll be beyond the time limit, so please excuse me for that. I'll start perhaps from the very beginning. Since the topic of our today's roundtable, social protection of the ATO fighters, so let's talk about the terminology. We have the law of Ukraine on combating terrorism, where there is a certain section, social protection of those persons who participate in combating terrorism. By the way, if we consider this law in broad terms, in my opinion, there is a very interesting phrase: those persons who volunteer to participate in combating terrorism, minimization of the consequences, they should have social guarantees, including those in case of their deaths, and the same guarantees cover their families. And when the people participate in the ATO, in fighting terrorism, they absolutely are eligible to those guarantees according to this law. So this issue is somewhat regulated, I would say. Again, we gradually proceed to getting or obtain the status of the participant of the combat actions. I agree, there are a lot of problems associated with that. Again, the law says that the participants ATO have the right to be considered as such. This law was passed in May, and the body which started to work on this issue, our state service, if I'm not mistaken, they started to work in September. They correct me. In October there was the first meeting of this commission. So taking in the taking into consideration, Minister of Defense of Ukraine, there is about 300. Let's say divide this number by the number which are still realistically the papers which are issued on a daily basis. This is not a simple issue from the point of time of bureaucracy, trustworthiness, etc., etc. We repeatedly heard about that. So can you specify the figure, total number, 29,000? Okay, decisions passed to consider the personnel, the different persons as the fighters, or let's say the ATO participants, 29,312 all in all. Speaking in principle, and those are emotions that they say, but every Friday, each Friday, during those weekly meetings, sometimes even more often than that, our top management of the general quarters, the general staff, consider their efforts on issuing those certificates. This is a big problem, and we made a serious breakthrough in resolving that problem. But again, coming back to the procedure per se, the Minister of Defense side, they clearly mentioned the requirements to be met. When this Mrs. the previous speaker was saying that the different paper and the wrong paper, yeah, we had a lot of problems of bureaucratic nature, but if somebody doesn't meet the requirements existing, I'm sorry, I'm talking about the documents which were adopted by the Minister of Defense per se, but they were not accepted later by the other bodies. This cannot be so. I'm talking about the situation as it is. So I report to you that those documents, since for the 93rd Brigade were, let's say, sent to Dnipropetrovsk, there were some difficulties. They were just sitting there for a long time without any actions being taken. But then we accelerated that work, and that a lot of documents, a bit less than what you mentioned, were considered. I know that. I mean, meeting the standards and those requirements, procedural requirements, and their documentation, we have to take care of that. We cannot send away. Sometimes, unfortunately, some wrongdoings happen, but that's true. But we exert necessary efforts, and I must say that almost 30,000 number speaks of itself, you know. Regarding the military commissars' offices, the provisions or regulations on the commission of the Minister of Defense, which actually has a right to grant the status of ATO participants. This has been registered by the Minister of Justice. This status can be given by the Ministry, and the commissions of the, let's say, the regional military commissar office and the city of Kiev. You have 30 seconds, and then you will have a chance to answer the questions. Okay, I'll try to fit into that time limits. All those servicemen who participated in the combat activities and were demobilized in March and April, they were issued a package of documents to address or to submit those to the local military commissar offices. I personally last week carried out the monitoring of the Kirovograd, Lviv, and some other office of this type. And in Kharkov, I believe there were 228 of those people who applied. They took they accept the documents, they process those, and then sent to the Commission of the Minister of Defense. So the work, we do face the problems, but at the same time, it's under the permanent control, continuous control on the part of the Minister of Defense and our forces of Ukraine. So the issue, we are working on that and we make some progress. Thank you. If you are talking about the time limits. Thank you. Dear participants and speakers who would like to speak up their minds regarding the first block of first module of our issues to be considered. I'm head of the Department of Social Policy, of Humanitarian Policy of Minister of Defense of Ukraine, General Reserve, Ms. Kukushkin. I support 100% what has been said by my colleague from the General Staff Office, etc. But I would like to say what kind of actions are taken by Minister of Defense in order to simplify the procedure of getting or obtaining or issuing the certificates of participants of, let's say, the combat actions. After the specific resolution, the mechanism of issuing those certificates has greatly been facilitated and simplified. But I'll go a few words about background of the issue. Law enforcement bodies always had the right to issue the certificates of the invalid or disabled person as a result of war, the participants in the warfare, and those who have special merits for Ukraine. Since the Soviet times up to 2005, in that year, after the resolution of the Cabinet of Ministers, they introduced certain amendments, after which the Minister of Defense only have the right to do that. They grant the status of the participants of combat activities, which we do, and we provide the certificate, 50% decrease of payment for the traveling documents once a year. After 2005, the Minister of Social Policy and their regional bodies for social protection of population issue certificates of the participant in war, disabled person, or injured person, wounded person, and the family members. Since 2005, yes. Since that year when we did amendments into this resolution. This made provision for the function to, let's say, enable the Minister of Defense to issue such certificates. After the State Commission on the War Veterans and the participants of ATO, we introduced certain amendments, not to the existing procedure, Resolution 3002. The Cabinet of Ministers passed a new resolution when they delegated this right to the state service. Civil service. When we actually saw the number of those who real badly needs the status of the participant in combat activities, we introduced amendments into this resolution where Minister of Defense or other law enforcement bodies had the right to issue such documents. After the March resolution of the President of Ukraine regarding the issuance of those documents to ATO participants, and then the resolution of March 2 of the General Staff, we greatly simplified this procedure. Also we developed or drawn up a new procedure for determining the status of participation in combat activities and the issuance of the special badges. By this, until now, this procedure is still under consideration of the Minister of Social Policy. After that, it will be given to the Minister of Defense of Ukraine. So what scheme we are going to have after that? The Minister of Defense and General Staff, they have their own commission. Then different, let's say, the different armed forces categories. Also, they have the commissions to issue. We are talking about the servicemen and the military forces personnel, those who participate in this operation, and who been drafted to the army according to special resolution. After they demobilized, each of them will be issued a set of papers, and when they are going to register this or another military commissar office, they will be entered in special registry. They have to arrive at this office, provide the set of documents, and then military commissar officers will form the package of documents and send it to the Kiev military commissar office. How long it will take for the whole procedure? We have not made our calculations. I inform you that this is going to be registration Ministry of Justice. Only then we can start this work. Esteemed guests, I did not interrupt anybody. We will have the question session later on.
Is the representative of the Ministry of Social Policy? Will he be talking about the issues of the disabled people, invalid of war, so-called, and talking about, you will forget it, I don't want to, but the day after tomorrow, from one of the foreign countries, the airplane will arrive with around 120 people who are members of the families of those who were killed. They were there on holidays. Those people whose members of families died. We cannot include anyone, but there is assistance that we get from military units, from people. So we do a lot, but I do not want to quote any figures. As to the status of the disabled person of war, how does the person get such a status? That is regulated by the resolution of the Cabinet of Ministers number 92. The procedure is, for example, the person participates in ATO, and that is the military from the servicemen of armed forces of Ukraine. He has the right to get the status of participant of military actions. He received this certificate. We have regional commissions and one central, Lviv, Kyiv, Dnipropetrovsk, Odessa. They define the reasons where the disability is related to participation in military actions. After the opinion of this military medical commission is received, the documents are submitted to the similar commission at the place where person resides, and the commission defines the term of disability, whether that's a year, for 2 years, or for life. After that, the person comes to the regional unit of maintenance, of social maintenance, and receives the certificate of the veteran of war or participant of war fare, and receives the badge and the document which allows such person to travel all over Ukraine free of charge. And also the people get the certificate, the member of the family of the person who was killed, and that is issued then based on this certificate, the person receives the certificate, the member of the family of the person who was killed. On the 29th of January in Ukraine Forum, we organized the press conference, and we disseminated the icon graphic and all the military commissions, they know about that. I support my colleague because the Ministry of Social Policy is responsible for giving the status. Well, we have our competence, they have their competence, but all the regional military commissions, they know how to provide assistance in case of this situation. If you have problems, come to us, come to military commissions. This is the issue which is resolved. I have figures as to payment of single monetary assistance to families of those who were killed. The percentage is very high. Now the topic of the conference is a little bit different, but at the same time, yeah, the figures are high. Then later you will have an opportunity to ask questions. Now let us finish with the presentation, talking about corruption during identifying the status of participant of military actions. Yesterday there was 29th anniversary of Chernobyl disaster. Till now they defined the status to people who participated in liquidation of the disaster. And this will be the same in our case, because there will be always problems. You know that till now we even now still define the status of participant of military actions for the Second World War, for events in Cuba, in Czechoslovakia, and so on and so on. Afghan now. In the list of the documents, there are some technical documents which are to be submitted by person, and two main documents. What are the technical documents? The document, the statement, and also the copy of the first page of your passport, so that your name and surname are clearly stated in the certificate. And then the certificate, according to resolution 314, that says that Ivanov participated in anti-terrorist operation from this date till this date. And another one is that is the order. What is it? That is the document from Anti-Terrorist Center. The order issued that the person was in the zone of ATO, and there are no global issues which we cannot resolve. And we have the Anti-Terrorist Center, and the military units are there. But who will be doing it in case if the serviceman who's dismissed from military service and he had no documents to define the status according to the decree 94, all the search of people who are on military service that is done by the persons, that is done by military commissions. I have a question. You mentioned that the problem is to register people who were not participants. That is the problem. But have you Ministry examined the experience of some foreign countries like the US and Israel, and do they have problem with corruption when issuing the certificates and registering the participants of military actions? Thank you for your question, but the first person who spoke showed two different samples of certificates. The first one, which was issued by the commander of military unit, what is it? Some local authorities, many local authorities are ready to provide privileges or benefits to participants of the ATO before they receive the certificate that they were participants of military actions, and that is why the commandership of military units give such certificates. that confirm that person was there, and they are used to get such benefits from these institutions. The second certificate is according to the standard, according to the resolution of the Cabinet of Ministers 413, and the serviceman does not receive it. It goes together with all the documents, so that the person then receives another certificate which confirms the status of the participant of military actions. The copy could be issued, but this main certificate is not given to the serviceman. Together with other documents in a package, it is submitted to a commission. As to experience, you are right. Previously, if we take the independent Ukraine, in the previous periods, usually it was all related to crossing the state border, because that was as part of the peacekeeping missions. Now, this is for the first time that it is happening like that, and there were problems with clearly stating it. There is a unit which entered the ATO zone, and they are there. But there are units from which 10 or 15 people are sent there. They have the order on sending a person to business trip or to this service. In the first case, the unit is there, and the dislocation is on the territory of Donetsk region. The person needs to go outside of that territory. But again, I would like to say the process has started, and 29,000 have already received the certificates. Allow me to answer that question that you asked about international experience. The international experience as to servicemen who participated in military actions on the territory of their country are different. For example, the United States of America or other countries, they do not issue any status for participation in military actions, whether that was intensive or not intensive action. They pay one-time single remuneration. Then they provide some privileges to these people, privileges on entering the universities or something like that. They do not issue them the status. And the people who are dismissed because of disability, they have the rights for benefits in accordance to the legislation of that country. And that is our system, and we follow it. Another question, whether the Ministry of Defense informs people about that well enough. At the website, there's all the list of documents, and in the center of attention, under the control, the Commission sits there every Friday and passes the decisions. And I talked at the UCMC, I talked about that at the radio FM. There is a big concentration on military actions there, and we have to work more with the bodies of social protection of population. Thank you, and now we will have a discussion or Q&A session, and we would like to request you. Lisa had a question, I have a question. And those who are in the audience, you can also ask questions. Also, and the lawyers are working on that, but in the US there is a status, military combat status, and they also have many discussions on that. Ukraine is not the only country where there are problems with issuing the status. They have similar issues with corruption, where they blame politicians that they in fact did not participate in military actions, but they do have this status, and it also provides for some privileges and preferences. It's different from ours. The person will have to independently work on do whatever they do in life, but the state gives them all the material support and social support, and they are given the civil advisors who support them first year after they finish service in the armed forces. They have full support, information, rehabilitation, psychological support, and they can count they can rely on getting certain material package of support. So it would be wrong to say that they don't have the status. I believe that we will discuss this experience in the second half of our discussion. Unfortunately, well, you started talking about this issue of the status of disabled person after the war. Maybe the person should have only one status, only one certificate, so that the privileges are used only based on one certificate. But if a person has the status of disability related to war, and the person receives the status for a year, but what happens after the year? Is that certificate taken away from a person or not? I'm not the representative of social policy. If there's no one to answer, I will answer. I will continue answering the questions addressed to the Ministry of Social Policy. I worked there for 3 years. So listen to that. In accordance to the law of Ukraine on the status of veteran of war, one person has the right to get one status of the participant of war. And the veterans of war are participants of war and veterans of war. And the group of disability is set for certain time frame, for half a year, 2 years. When the person loses the right to have the status of participant of the war, so basically here comes the case that they put the certificate of participant of the warfare. If in the future he does not confirm the group of disability and it's cancelled, then he enjoys the privileges as participant of military actions. And the bodies of social maintenance in the single database register this person as the participant of ATO. The person receives the certificate, but after that, well, it's all in the case when they take the disabled person of war certificate. There were some people who wanted to ask questions. So your questions, please, and then raise your hands, those who want to ask questions. I would like to again stress that for the press media there will be another session for asking questions. I would like to say, first of all, to define unfortunately, we all are considering we are looking not into the root of the problem, but at the consequences. But the root is that we did not do anything during the year for professional army. And now the state commits mistake after mistake. They have to address the issue of the lack of professional army quantitatively, and that's related to the problem that these people will later have to get the status of participant of ATO. We all know that the war will not finish quickly. As to questions, my first question, it's to Mr. Prosecutor. For example, according to the representatives of the Ministry of Defense, we can already say that they have problems. Why? Myself, when I was finishing my military service, I have then to go to the military commission, but how would they know where I was, what I was doing? That's corruption. They told us about that. That's official corruption. The second question from me. Talking about those, what social protection they would have. When we were discussing it with the Law 100, there was a situation where they do not know what to answer. The person is not considered to be serviceman. As you have heard, quite recently we buried our friend Igor Bolnevitsky. The person was captured, but somehow they stopped paying salary to family. The person who was taken prisoner. We request the representative of the General Prosecutor's Office to answer. As to the first, there is a procedure when a person is liberated, certain package of documents is submitted to place where he has to register with the military unit. After the person returns back from the ATO zone, and if the person does not get they do not get the certificate, then they have to initiate it later. The second question is imprisonment. We received the draft law of Ukraine, in accordance to which some of the laws on the civil protection, on social sector, the changes and amendments are introduced, and it's that during the time when the person was in captivity, the salary is to be paid. And there should be the mechanism of how the salary should be paid to the members of their family. Unfortunately, we're not legislators. Our function is purely executive. The next question. I'm from Donbass battalion. I would like to join to what the servicemen of 81 era mobile document said. Why our document was set up as the voluntary document, and we were fighting at the front line from the very beginning. After rotation, we came to Kiev, and we were told the strange thing: you have nothing to do with us. You are transferred to Mariupol, to military unit 3057. Your permanent place of dislocation is in ATO zone. You will not be going in or out of there. There is an impression that the state, you can see it on TV, they show it nicely, but basically only common people can do it. But they send them further away. I would like to thank the volunteers. I don't know how we would survive if there were no volunteers. Just they send us as far away from here as possible so that we do not create any problems. Then you were talking about the format of the certificate, but what is written in the certificate? I was in all the military points. I was in Ilovaisk, I was in captivity, but the certificate doesn't say so. It has Slavinsk, Popasnaya. Why don't you indicate it, and who's responsible for that? When we came to the commander, he said, but what's the difference for you? I'm sorry, the commander, National Guard, Ministry of Interior. Another thing, talking about medical commissions, you were talking nicely how they issue it all to the disabled people, but 90% of people who received wounds, but the military commissions indicate influenza in the medical certificate. I'm like that. I had a very strong wound, and when I was in captivity, I had a problem with kidneys. After I was liberated from the imprisonment, the main diagnosis was not this wound into the head, but the main one that they wrote was the kidneys. And they said that, okay, the kidneys is, the disease of the kidneys is not related to the war. But we are feeding multi-thousand, this huge machine with many thousands of people, the authorities. But who's there responsible for what? Where is the responsibility? When the law will be passed, as Mr. Poroshenko said, why those who were found guilty in getting bribes, why are they not at the front line? Like I was sent to the first battle without machine gun, with 2 grenades and a knife. When was it? That's how I started fighting. When was it? In which month? It was 5th of May. When in Karlovka I participated in the first battle with the knife and 2 grenades. Which battalion are you from? Ask your questions to the representatives of the authorities. We would like the representatives of the institutions to answer these questions. How can you fight these violations? And how to make responsible those who make such violations? It's a difficult question if you take. That is the unit of the National Guard of Ukraine, and we have less information. As to this problem, the military unit, we have military units in Konstantinovka, in Severodonetsk, in Kramatorsk, and the point that is where the point of dislocation is. We have military units also which like Brigade 72, which is relocated to Donetsk Oblast, to the Donetsk region. They are all there. And how long will they be there is what we do not know. What is left in Bielaya Tserkev is not a point of permanent dislocation. It's a unit which is separated from what is in Donetsk region. As to the medical certificates again, and that is those doctors who should be responsible for that. If I go there and say you wrote something wrong, they will ask me, are you a doctor? And I will say not. I heard a lot about that, but the hotline of the general staff is 400, is there, and my department is supporting the work. 4544451. That's the phone number of hotline. It's difficult to call there. There are many complaints. Yeah, they answered this phone. I warned you. It is very difficult to call there. Saturday, Sunday, called Saturday, Sunday, and when people say I was given a wrong certificate, well, the people did not ask me. They call from Donetsk and they talk about movement of some columns of enemy. But again, that is all within the competence of doctors. This is no secret. I do not know about the National Guard, but in every unit of the armed forces of Ukraine, they have the representative of military service, of law enforcement body. They have the representatives of special field military prosecution offices. This is the prosecution office number 31, 32, 33. They are over there in every unit. I came from a business trip. We were met by the representative of military counterintelligence, and people have the chance to state about such cases. The military commissars, that's a stereotype that they are all bribers. Maybe that is so, but many of them were replaced. And last year we had a case when the military commissar made a statement that he was given a bribe. But what have they done to those who were replaced? Was there an investigation done? They were moved to other positions and some of them were dismissed. But these positions are not related to activity of military commissars. We can talk, I'm sorry, talking about corruption, but the main principle of creation of the armed forces, and that is in military statute, is that there should be only one boss. And having one boss is the precondition for corruption. But they're trying to do something. The commander will sign and another person will stamp. Please be short. Those who ask questions and those who answer. Milevska Varvara, European Legal Service of Ukraine. A small remark on getting the status during 29 years. I believe that's a shame. My father was the Chernobyl rescuer. He died recently. When he died, they said that is like some influenza, but that was not a disease related to Chernobyl disaster. And what they write and the expert opinion, they said you can claim against it. We do not see that he died from Chernobyl disaster, but my father received 80 red. He had all the certificates, but they said he doesn't have that. And the sentence that was there, it cost money. What helped was that my mother came and said, I have 2 children, we have no money to pay for that, and we received that certificate. But that was the problem. I was waiting for this expert opinion, but people were saying that the state cannot support all the families of those who died. My question is to Valery. You mentioned that You punish people, then do they help families so that families can submit the documents? Okay, they put the civil servant into prison, they liberate the civil servant, but what's next? What should people do? Because the problem is still there. Thank you for your question. I will answer briefly. 96 claims, 36 satisfied, 60 considered, and many of them, what they claim against is that the bodies of military administration are not active. I quoted Article 36, where the representation is made. We have real examples of violating the rights via the court, and then the local authorities are to issue certificates and pay compensation. Okay, and you have, do you have the certificates? Do you have information on that, where the prosecutor's office managed to get the rights of citizens defended? There we have all the certificates. The prosecutor's office did not replace the secondary assistance. We are limited in present everyone in the law, in the court, and we are limited by law. The law indicates 3 categories. Now we have Article 36 prim, which stipulates for the form of defense the people who, because of their physical status, cannot defend, and that fact is to be confirmed by the court. The military prosecution confirmed the basis, and they appeal against inactivity related to issuing the certificate. And also I agree that the state apparatus is too big. It eats up a lot of money. I am the representative of military prosecutor's office, the military prosecution. There are 32 Harrison, 560 persons only. 2,500 cases implemented, so we can talk a lot, but there are some problems, and prosecutor's office is trying to fulfill their functions. We should understand that it was set up only last year. The next question from the audience. Korж Alexei. First remark. As well, a person who's disabled a year after or 2 years after, and he comes to us and his disability is either confirmed or the certificate is given to him. In Dnipropetrovsk we have this situation when battalions do not execute their responsibilities on providing documents to commission. Irrespective of how they should act or behave, they do not do their work. We ask the military units and they just don't react. Who will be responsible for that? The commanders of units? If yes, then what should be their responsibility for that? Tell us, explain how this should be. If not, if they don't want to work on that, then let us do it. We'll do it faster. Because we've been doing it for 8 or 9 months already. We know how it should be done. The military commissariats are not doing what they should. because in Dnipropetrovsk they are all from the Party of Region, because they have the command, the order from Vilko. Don't do anything to ATO participants. The person in regional commissariat is a person from Vilko, and also volunteers. Volunteer battalions are rejected by everyone. We win the processes in court. We say that there are documents saying that the participant of volunteer battalion participated in ATO. We come to the Ministry of Social Policy and they tell us the serviceman has to come himself and submit the documents. How? The person was killed. How can the person do it? If you cannot do it, give it to volunteers. We write the law on volunteers. We write the provisions. Do I understand you correctly? You have to, 3. Please tell us, and we'll, the questions. If the military unit or military commissariats do not want to do that, give it to volunteers. We'll do it better and faster than you do it. And second, volunteer battalions. Why no one of armed forces, of the National Guard, of the security service support the volunteer battalions? Why are you afraid of us? We are not fighting against you. We are fighting for our country, and you are afraid of us. The law on volunteers was signed on the 9th, was passed on the 9th. I know, I wrote it. On the 9th, the law was passed by the Verkhovna Rada. The president has not signed it. I cannot go to Poroshenko and tell him sign it. The answer to the second question, Mr. Maltsev would like to answer that. I would like to say on the 7th of April, the law was passed. On the 9th, it was sent to signature of the president. We together were writing this law, the experts in the service and the representatives and volunteers and MPs. We all understand that when it is signed, then the issues related to giving the status of participants of ATO to volunteers, and the families of those volunteers who perished, then it all will be resolved, and together with you, together with the representatives of volunteer battalions, we are working on amendments to procedure of giving the status of participant of military actions, and we hope that together with you we will prepare the amendments on providing the status of the participant of war and participant of ATO. Who can answer the first question? As to the documents, I will repeat. On Friday, myself personally, I called 4 military commissariats. There is Mr. Polutsigan. I called Kharkiv, Lviv, Kiev, Kirovograd, and I asked those who are dismissed, do they bring you documents? Do they come? Yes, they come. What is the result? And he reports, I did not take the figures. In Kharkiv, I remember 28 they brought to us, and they gave back 28. I cannot tell you about Dnipropetrovsk. The directive of the head of the military staff defines that if a serviceman who is dismissed in April and May, if they did not send the documents, then he's given these documents, and then he writes an application and sends. I was interested in how they do it in military units, and I asked, How many came to us? 200. How many did you proceed? 200. The commanders managed to give this full package. But we need to look personally at everyone. But the issue of getting the status of the military actions, the role of this participant is minimized. That is the commander during a month has to send this package of documents for consideration. But in life it's different. 1,600 documents from one brigade was brought. Someone had to work on that. I have nothing against that. Last week I was in Brigade 98 in Volnovakh and Krasnov, and first question I asked, where are yours documents? They said they sent it. People say as to battalions, they changed. They are all mobilized, and the work degree of training is pretty high. They do everything. They try to help. In 2-3 weeks, they will do it. I believe we will see different figure, and also 23,000 decisions made. There will be a lot of time given so that this decision is made and the person receives the document. How much time does it take? If you take it from a unit to the final point, up to 2 months. But again, this could take 2 weeks, a week. Is there any maximum or is it endless? It goes into the range of finding a person and issuing the documents. These documents, well, that is the document which not everyone can issue. Do you understand it correctly? That the civil servants will be on holidays during the May holidays? No. Our work is done on a permanent basis. 4 questions were asked. Will there be the 5th one? Okay, you were the first one. Then I give the floor to the next person. Olga Valieva. I saw the situation when the documents of a person were lost. The person from Brigade 72. How often does it happen? And in which case, how to come out of this situation? Brigade 72, the 8th Army Corps is dismissed, the documents are submitted to the archive, and there's no package of documents. There's a protocol. There are 681 names, but there are 681 cases, but one is lost. One is missing. How often these cases happen? Marian Prisezhnuk, please put down this information and we will make inquiries. The decision is made that the package of document should be given. What was there before the command during a month sending the documents, I believe that was not very balanced decision. Now, when you dismissed, you received the subscription, the registration. There should be the mark made that you participated in ATO. Then the package of documents should have different documents and plus technical documents. So people who participated in ATO, again, I recommend you keep these documents. When you receive them, you come home and you go to notary, make 2-3 copies for the future. Then no one asks the question about insurance age, about how many years the person worked in for the state or for military. All those days and periods which were in ATO zone, they are registered like 1 month for 3 months. One officer was dismissed if the officer, if he was there for a year, that will be registered at 3, and he has the right to gain the status of the veteran of military service or veteran of labor. So just keep in mind what I said. In the Ministry of Social Policy, they will explain everything to you. Roman Titekala, lawyer, the coordinator of the Center of Legal Assistance to Participants of ATO. I have a question to the prosecutor. Many people come to us on Article 408. I wanted to ask, doesn't the prosecutor office want to, for example, the military, they recognize their blame. I recognize that I was wrong, and the prosecutor said, let's do the second part and everything will be fine. And then they say that the third part is recommended. It's but the real term is deprivation of will. If the person wants to fight, so basically, what do you think about the accusation, which is like a punitive function? We have the provisions of the criminal code of Ukraine, which recognizes, well, the court allows to recognize some of the circumstances I believe that local prosecutors, they look at the circumstances, real circumstances now, to say that this is qualification with reserve, or that there is some instruction from the General Prosecutor's Office. No, I believe that you as a lawyer should think about these issues, taking into account their desire to participate in each case, this is addressed separately. I know the position of the General Prosecution Office. There's no demand to punish without explanation. The next question Oksana Timchuk wanted to ask, basically changed. Now I would like to mention, we saw the problem when there is a fact of the person who was killed. There are some people who saw this body dead, but they block any payments. There are basically some people believe that the state policy this way diminishes the burden on that. What do you recommend when there are evidence of the witnesses who say that they know exactly when the body was given? These bodies are lost, but unfortunately people do not react to such things. The prosecution office has to look at that, and they need to think about whether that's possible to resolve that situation. The case of Tkachuk, he's a commander of Kievska Rus battalion. The first suspicion has non-fulfillment of the law, and the personal signature of Tkachuk certifies to the probability, to the event. Then the suspicion is changed, and it says that that was an oral order, but the prosecutor office does not react to such actions of their prosecutors. There's no order. How can we say that this is not a punitive mechanism of a prosecutor's office if all these consultations they acquire the legal nature? I will start from the first one. In reality, I believe that the lawyers who are present there, they know there is a status of the person missing and the person who's killed. My recommendation is to know all the data, the addresses, the contact numbers of the witnesses, because there's no other way out how to recognize that person as perished. In the future, the relatives will be able to receive. Maybe I did not ask the question correctly. I know how to protect these people. I believe that when these people are sent to the court, that is, people, they need to understand that not everyone can do it. But if there are witnesses that these bodies were given to specific hospitals, I'm the person who allowed the situation to happen. Instead of getting the status of the person killed, the person, other cases when people became responsible for that. Are you planning such inspections? Are you considering these issues in prosecutor's office? I would like to remind you that the prosecutor's office cannot do any inspections, and there's one case write about the circumstances of the case and send them to the main prosecutor's office, and the information will be introduced into single register. If the body of the dead person disappeared, then it will be very difficult to resolve this issue. In the case that you mentioned, it is to be written on a paper, explain all the circumstances, tell me, please, was there an application to the authorities made? There are several oblast, regional, no, to military, and they said to go to the militia with the application that the person is missing. We talked to prosecutor's office. I understand that you represent the prosecutor office of a higher ranger, but unfortunately, this is not one single case, there's the whole system. We have 3 more questions, then we will present the brochure, and then the coffee break, Victoria.
Буде? Чи це вже
Okay, the next question. National Guard of Ukraine, Lvchitsky Battalion. Probably you know about our battalion. These are people from Maidan who went to ATO, and only 48 persons received the certificate. After the commission was set up, our commanders were submitting the documents. They submit the documents, the guys go to ATO, they come back in a month and a half, but they say it should be, the certificate should be of a different format. They give new certificate, they go to ATO, they come back. For example, me and the commission not quite recently gave it to someone. Everyone knows now the prices for communal services. The guys have families at home. You can go out and see what cars you are driving, but the guys cannot even drive, go by metro. My battalion received 2,150 hryvnias in 2 months, and the question, when will we receive this certificate? Who do we talk to? Because we submitted the documents back in autumn. Who will compensate to our families what we had to receive according to the law? Should we just go back home? Instead of that, we went to war. The commission and other civil servants, they do not pay attention to us. The guys then go and they cannot find anyone responsible for that. And what Oksana said, there are many more cases, like Swedish battalion. We have very little time left. One sentence. Swedish battalion in Ilovaisk, those who were killed, they were for a month in the, they were, and they were saying they could not recognize the bodies. They did not want to spoil the celebration of the Independence Day. That is what they explained later. The representative of the prosecutor's office, please comment on that. Thank you for your question. I will try to report Opel Astra of 2006. That's my only car. It's down there. So talking about the car, it's not true. But second, are you located in Kiev? Please tomorrow. Please tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Let's meet at the office of the commander. I will not tell you the name. He received the general. Let's meet there and let's discuss everything you are talking about. I understand that that is also about the National Guard. But these are not that's not within my competence. But let us at least resolve your problem. Do you believe I want it to happen? I don't want it to happen. Let us resolve your problem. You say that starting from November, you supplied all the documents, but they were not considered. My mobile phone number, just wait for me, I will give it to you, we'll go together. The last question. The moderators do have the phone number. Psychological support to rehabilitation. There are cases that military are dismissed when they are wounded, and then they refuse, and they are rejected in further medical treatment. I have an example in Bila Cerkva, Brigade 72. How should military act in these cases? My question is, what should be done and who to address? Also, I don't know whether this is a proper question to ask here, but what is the Ministry of Defense doing on psychological rehabilitation? The issue of rehabilitation will be in the next block. Thank you. I will try to answer. As to dismissing, give me a person who will come and say that I was dismissed. To dismiss the person who was mobilized, it is not possible to do it. Maybe you have different information. The person who's been treated for a long time is not dismissed from the military service, but such person is dismissed from the position to appoint a different person to the same position. These are the cases that take place. The person, when is at the hospital for treatment, while staying at the hospital, the person receives same money, but when the person comes out of the hospital, the person can find out that she was removed from the position of the grenade launcher. But let's not mix it up. You're dismissed from military service. Okay.